We're still reeling in the aftermath of another close loss, but we don't have a lot of time to wallow in our sadness as Ole Miss lays in the weeds.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
I'm all right, I guess. Still a little bit in shock. Not necessarily losing to a top 10 team on the road by a single point. More like the way the season played out. I'm a little surprised. I had to go back and think, okay, what did I think this spring? What did I think this summer? This is not what I anticipated, Luke.
No, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen, and I want to thank BetOnline for being our sponsor today. And I don't know if it's lays in the weeds or lies in the weeds. I don't know whatever I said first. I'm sorry if I screwed that up. My grandmother was an English teacher. I should know it, but she taught English a long time ago, so maybe English was different back then. Maybe she used hither and yon back then. I don't know. Anyway, Jimmy, yeah, I want to start with a couple of things from one of our loyal listeners, Cameron Bishop. He sent these in, and so I'm going to start with these three things he sent us, and this will take up the first segment. He said, first of all, Jordan Battle continues to be MIA this year. I 100% agree. I thank you, Jordan Battle, for coming back. We love you. You're always a hero. Your pick six against Georgia in the SEC title game is awesome. But frankly, it just hadn't been a good year for him. I mean, it just hasn't. I mean, you rarely hear his name called at all. I don't think he has an interception this year. I'm not looking up the stats right now, but boy, I should be able to rattle them off. We have created the fewest turnovers in the college football universe. The second thing you said is this is the first year under Saban that we don't have to have a go-to wide receiver. Even if you take out the past several years, we had 2 to 4 stud wide receivers per year. This year, we don't even have one. Are they not getting developed by Coach Wiggins? It can't all be chalked up to inexperience. As plenty of our junior wide receivers had good freshman years that they built off their sophomore and junior years. I think, Jimmy, we can totally agree with that, and I want to get back to it. And then he sent this tweet from Mike Rodak. Said Alabama had 12 players on the field when LSU called a timeout for its game-winning two-point conversion. Then they called a timeout, and Alabama had 12 players again on the field after the timeout. That just screams confusion, lack of focus, whatever you want to say. But I want to go to the wide receiver thing for a minute. That's something we've been saying on this podcast for a while. We don't have a dude at wide receiver. Now, I hope nobody takes offense to that. If any of our receivers are listening to it and go, hey, I'm a dude. We got very good players. We don't have a Judy, Waddle, Ruggs, Devontae, Amari. We got none of that. And I thought it was – I thought it was interesting that Ja'Cory Brooks got one of the players of the week from the coaching staff, because I think if he makes if he makes 2 more plays in that game the other night, I think he's SEC player of the week. I mean, he steps into legendary status, like he's the guy that helped Alabama win a game they probably shouldn't have won. But he didn't make those plays. And I mean, I'm not blaming him. Again, you can't be mad at somebody because they aren't as good as Amari Cooper or Devontae Smith. That's not fair. But the point is there, and the point is correct. We don't have our typical wide receiver dudes. We just don't have them.
Yeah, it's real baffling to me. Now, first of all, I want to say, in support of Ja'Cory, I've said all year we don't have a go-to receiver. Maybe we do now. Maybe the answer is Ja'Cory. He's caught the most balls now. He seems to be, we almost sort of force the ball to him a lot against LSU by design. I guess Ja'Cory has sort of developed into that guy, but it's also an explanation as to why Alabama has lacked almost entirely a vertical passing attack, because if there is a go-to receiver, it's Ja'Cory Brooks, and he's a possession receiver. He's a 3rd and 7 guy. He's not a 1st and 10, let's see how far Bryce can throw it guy. Um, and I think that's partially explains a lot of things. But Jacory is sort of rounding into the go-to guy. But even if the answer to, hey, I think Jacory is actually a go-to receiver, how good is he? And by that I mean, and this will also address the Jordan Battle question, because I see these two as interrelated to a certain degree, Luke. And that is, I'm more prepared or wanting to talk about this next week once we get through a full 10 games. And once Ole Miss is beyond us, and now all that's ahead of us is Austin P, and then the little old Auburn game at the end. But once we have 10 games is when I'm really going to get loud about this. But this is a preview of my point. Schools, I don't know how everybody works, but like when it comes to like AP All SEC team and the coaches All SEC team, the schools actually nominate players from their own program. The SID office at Alabama, in conjunction with the coaching staff at Alabama, submits names and stats and sort of makes a pitch to the voters about, hey, this guy, and this guy should make your first or second team All SEC. I'm telling you, Luke, I mean, it's easy to say this when you're a little upset after the loss to LSU, but who are you going to pound the table? I'm not talking about maybe this. I'm not talking about a Emil Ekiyor. Maybe he's second team All SEC. Maybe. No. What I'm saying, Luke, is who do you stand on the table, pound it, and say, this All SEC team, first or second team, is not legitimate unless so-and-so from Alabama is on it. That list is short, and it is missing big names. And not picking on Jordan Battle, but he's one of them. There's no way I'm standing on the table and arguing that he's a first or second team All SEC player, and he's a guy in the preseason that you would have slam dunk, just penciled him in, right? So I think Jordan, the whole Alabama receiving corps, Jacory Brooks might be our go-to receiver now. Is he first or second team All SEC? Heck no. Heck no. So who is? Bryce, yes. He might not get it because there's been so many good quarterbacks in the league. He might not get it, but he's deserving. Gibbs, yes. Deserving first team All SEC running back, my opinion. There's other guys that are deserving too, so we'll see if he gets it, but he's deserving. I'd pound the table for him. Yeah. Yes, Bryce. Yes, Gibbs. I would argue yes, Latham, even though he's a true sophomore. I think he's been our best offensive lineman all year and is deserving of All SEC mention. I would somewhat argue Tyler Steen. Not sure I'd pound the table. Not sure I'd pound the table for Steen or Eki or Cohen, but I could see it. I could see it. Second teamish. I could see it, but I'm not going to pound the table. That's Young, Gibbs, and Latham on offense. On defense, it's a few more. I would say Byron Young, Will Anderson, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Others are maybe Henry To'o, maybe. Maybe Dallas Turner. That's it. That's it.
That's a great point. That's a great
And
point.
And Reichard. I forgot Reichard. Reichard's a slam. I'd pound the table. There's no kicker I want other than – I know he had this a little brief slump, but that was just 3 or 4 kicks. Reichard, I'm not trading Reichard for any kicker in this league.
Okay, I agree with you. And what's funny, when you were saying that, I was like, I don't know that Bryce Young's even going to be first team All SEC. I bet he's not.
I would vote Hendon Hooker.
I guess we got to let it play out now because Stetson Bennett outdueled Hendon Hooker and whatever. I think Bryce Young's the best quarterback in the country. I don't even think he's going to make first team on my All SEC this year. That's what's weird.
Missing the 2 games hurt, and he's not playing his best because of the injury. So I don't blame Bryce. I really think it was the injury and that knocked him from clearly the best quarterback in the SEC to maybe second, maybe third, and maybe first. Let's let the games play out, because I said Hendon Hooker, and I believe Hendon Hooker. If I was voting today, I'd vote Hendon Hooker, but we don't have to vote today, and that's why I wanted to wait another week or so before I get real adamant about things. But today I'd vote for Hendon Hooker and Bryce second. KJ Jefferson would be up there, but gosh, after the game, after the loss to Liberty. I don't know. Jaden Daniels has had a really good year, statistically, but I think it's Hooker or Bryce, and I think they'll be first and second in some order.
Jimmy, let me tell everybody about Nissan. This week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment, it has to be, how about that entire 2016 game? Alabama gets down, was it 24-3? I think it was 24-3. Jalen Hurts, on the road, he really gets targeted, and it's not called. He fumbles. Then all of a sudden, Alabama scores with Calvin Ridley, and they also return a Calvin Ridley running play, by the way, if I remember right. And then Eddie Jackson returns a punt for a touchdown. Later on, Deron Payne scores a touchdown. Jonathan Allen scores a touchdown. Damian Harris had two really long runs, and one of them, I remember he got caught at the one. If you remember, that's what he was known for forever, was getting caught at the 1 yard line after big runs. Adoree Jackson ran him down twice in the USC game that year. But anyway, that game was a lot of fun. And then just when you think Alabama's got it all wrapped up, Ole Miss scores and they get the onside kick. And then they score again, I think. And then we finally get the ball. And if you remember, oh my God, our big running back, Bo Scarborough, he fumbles, and one of our linemen is able to pounce on it. And that's something that didn't go talked about very much. But anyway, this segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available at nissanusa.com, nissanusa.com, nissanusa.com. If I say it a bunch of times like that, you'll remember it. So going back to what you were saying, I don't know how many people you can pound the table for, because it's funny. Look, I would pound the table. I would pound a lot of things for Bryce Young, and I've got to find a better way to say that.
Yeah. Whoa. Nissan USA, Nissan USA, Nissan USA.
I'll tell you about J.C. Latham. Look, there were a lot of positive stats about him going into this game. He got beat pretty good in this game. He did not play well against LSU. He did not play well at all.
In my rewatch, I've gotten up to the second quarter, so I'm looking at the first quarter. He played pretty well. I can just tell you that first quarter he played pretty well. That's all I really can say emphatically on the rewatch. Every single time I watch the rewatch, the offensive line is a little better than I gave them credit for live in the game. And so far through the first quarter, even though Alabama is scoreless, offensive line done pretty well, particularly on that first drive. God, so it cost us the game. I mean, it really did. I mean, that first drive, it was a thing of beauty. We executed perfectly, and there were several plays where all five offensive linemen just had great blocks, and we just screamed down the field, and then the turnover in the end zone. And God, you hate to say your first offensive possession lost the game, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, it screams to the fragility of this team, of the thin glass psyche that this team has, like outside of Bryce Young. When something goes wrong, I mean, there's just a collapse. There is a stat out there. This is from Chris Felica. Alabama single-digit wins or losses versus SEC opponents. In the last 17 games, there have been 10 games where Alabama won by single digits or lost by single digits. In the previous 54 games to that in the SEC alone, there was only 10. Yep. So there is something wrong. To me, the common denominator is partially Bill O'Brien at offensive coordinator. And again, I'm not trying to lay all the blame at his feet. I think some of the blame does need to go to Saban, even though, again, I feel like I need to always throw this asterisk in there. Nick Saban is the greatest of all time. We had some people, some LSU fans. Look, I'll say this. Losses for Alabama are terrible. We don't like them at all, and we would sacrifice whatever to not have them. But as far as views and listens go for Alabama podcasts, they skyrocket when Alabama loses because people love to hear us either whine or give excuses or whatever they think we're doing. And they were like, y'all just don't even enjoy football anymore. Y'all are going to lose sometimes. And I'm like, No, we don't. That's the thing. We have not lost much. So we have only lost 2 games in the regular season, like a handful of times. I mean, in 19, when we had the Tua injury in 2010 and this year. That's
Yeah.
it in the regular season. I mean, that's it. I mean, take out '07 because
Yeah.
that was sort of the kickstart year.
And there's some similarities. There's some similarities in the sense that it's not totally to blame, not totally, but Bryce's injury has hugely affected the offense over the course of this season, the games he missed, and then playing dinged up. The 2019 team largely lost 2 games because the starting quarterback got hurt, largely. He first hurt his ankle and played some games gimpy, even the 2019 game against LSU, gimpy. And then obviously was lost in the Mississippi State game. Also similar to 2010 in this way, and I think even more similar to 2010. The 2010 team also suffered a pretty bad injury situation, but it also never seemed to play to its potential, except for maybe one game at the very, very end. I think this team has just not played to its potential all season like the 2010 team.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, really, it's also the sort of the same thing. I mean, LSU, I can't remember exactly what we lost by in 2010 to LSU, but it wasn't a lot. It was a single-digit game.
Lost in
And
the
then, of
fourth
course,
quarter.
we
We
lose to
lost.
Auburn.
Didn't get blown out. In this particular game, we lost in overtime. I think in 2010, off the top of my head, we lost something like 24-17, something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we lost to Auburn by 1 point, who went on to win the national championship. You know, that's the thing. We have these 2 losses. And frankly, Clemson's loss at Notre Dame, a team that has been beaten on their own field by Stanford and Marshall, Clemson lost there by 21. And they should be getting hammered a lot more than we are, a lot more. Clemson's not as good as we are. And this is not one of our best teams. But because we have 2 losses, people are just giddy, and we lost by 1 on a last-second field goal and 1 on a last-second 2-point conversion. I mean, and against 2 top 10 teams on the road.
That's my overarching take on the whole season, people. I mean, you just summed up. That's my overarching take. Has this season been rough? Yes. However, it is not because you lost by 3 points at Tennessee or 1 point at LSU. You're going to, I don't care how good you, some of the great Alabama teams still lose on the road to top 10 teams. Losing in a close game to Tennessee and a close game to LSU, that is not why this season is rough. The season has been rough, Luke, because of all the other games. You barely beat Texas. You barely beat A&M. Arkansas is 28-23 in the fourth quarter. You play horrible offensively in the whole second half against Mississippi State. The only games that are comfortable wins were against teams that our true freshmen could have beat, and Vanderbilt and Monroe and Utah State. Those have been the only comfortable wins and the only comfortable performances all season. We're going into game 10, and I have to scratch my head thinking of what was Alabama's best performance this year? And am I going to say with a straight face it's Vanderbilt? I mean, so you're going into the 10th game still looking for your best performance. And that's why this season has been rough. I know all the focus, Luke, is going to be on the loss in Baton Rouge and the loss in Knoxville. I said before those games, really good teams can lose those games. Those are tough games to win. Again, beating top 10 teams on the road. The only reason Alabama fans think those games should be won is because of Nick Saban and what he's accomplished during this dynasty. If you'd have suggested to Alabama fans before 2008 that you're just supposed to stroll into top 10 teams in their house and beat the crap out of them, that wasn't pre-2008 thinking with Alabama fans either. And even at that time, Alabama was one of the most, if not the most successful program in college football history. Look, those games are tough, but what has been a good performance? That's why this season has been, I'm going to use the word rough. It's not a disaster because I don't care what Alabama right now, as we stand here, Luke, Alabama is one of the 10 best teams in college football this season. They are.
Okay,
as of this moment, they are.
I'm with you.
But
do you think that Alabama is going to win Saturday? Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil your prediction that we're going to do later this week, but do you think they're going to win Saturday? Because I'll tell you right now, I don't.
I do. I do believe, and I'm going to predict it, and I'm not just predicting it because I'm an Alabama homer, though I am. I don't deny that. I am. But I'm going to predict it for this reason. Alabama has more good players than Ole Miss. Alabama has Bryce Young. Ole Miss doesn't. Alabama has Will Anderson. Ole Miss doesn't. Alabama should win that game. They're a double-digit favorite to do so. So I'm going to pick Alabama to win. Now, am I going to be shocked if Alabama loses? Heck no. I've watched this team play 9 times. No one that has watched this Alabama team play 9 times should believe for 1 second that you can't lose to Ole Miss and Oxford. Oh, heck yeah. They could lose that game. They very well might. And it could happen. I'm not going to mock people that pick it the other way. I get it. I totally get it. But, yeah, I think Alabama's going to win because they have more good players than Ole Miss does.
Let me tell everybody about BetOnline. You know how much I love BetOnline. I've talked about them a gazillion, trillion times. You know you love them too. You just go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your betting. And when it comes to football, baseball, basketball, whatever it is, find all the latest player developments, the team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single team. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline, man, that's where the game starts, baby. I love when I kind of funk it up like that, those live reads. Okay.
We'll funk it up. Luke will funk it up.
That is, people say that to me all the time, but I'm not sure they're saying funk. Anywho, Jimmy, let's talk for a minute. We won't spend a ton of time on this, but Alabama basketball starts tonight.
Sweet.
Hugh play Longwood. That sounds like the name that Rodney Dangerfield, of the school Rodney Dangerfield would have gone to in what was the movie? What was the movie he was in?
Back to school.
Back to school, yeah.
Thornton
Where he did the flying Lindy.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway.
The weird thing is, in typical Alabama basketball fashion, we're playing somebody that you're like, who? And then you look into them and you're like, oh, no, they're good.
They made the NCAA.
They made the NCAA tournament. They won 21 games. They get most of the team coming back. I mean, this is not an easy – I know – half of our fans or more are like, where is Longwood? Who's Longwood? They're good. Is what they are. They're good. But that's good. That's good for the team. Let's get a real test. It's not a dress rehearsal. Let's start out with, let's see if you can beat a team that was in the NCAA tournament a year ago that's likely to be there again this year. And let's see how it matches up. It's a real test. And I'm anxious to see it. Now, my tune might change with a loss. But, hey, that's to me what this team is going to be. I think this is just my prediction, Luke. And this sounds so general. This will kind of sound like a horoscope, where everything is so general, it all is true. But I just mean this for exaggeration effect. I believe so far, I'm not comfortable predicting a 1-loss record for this team. I'm just not, because I don't know I just think this team will have astounding wins and head-scratching losses. And yeah, that sounds a lot like last year. But I think it's for different reasons. Last year was about chemistry and a team that just didn't mesh and never learned to play well together. I think this year it's just about strangers playing with each other. It's like an all-star team. I mean, it's like there's too many new parts. Therefore, I think some nights it's just not going to work out. But on nights that the talent takes over, they'll be able to beat anybody.
I haven't looked it up. I know that Longwood made the NCAA tournament last year. I know that their best player and leading scorer transferred to Georgia, weirdly. So Alabama will play against him later on too. I don't know what their mascot is. Fingers crossed it's the Gamecocks, because that would be hilarious. But I don't think it is.
Longwood, it sounds like a team that, like, on the cartoon shows that me and you like, like we like The Simpsons, we like Family Guy, we like American Dad, stuff like that. It sounds like, hey, Peter, you going to the Quahog game tonight? Yeah, we're playing Longwood. It just sounds like a made up name of a team that's coming into town.
Speaking of that, I
Here we are.
remember a Simpsons one. There's a Simpsons. First of all, there's a great Simpsons where Joe Namath is a guest star, and it's awesome. I mean, he's not in there long, but it's fantastic. And secondly, there's a Simpsons. I think Homer is watching a college football game, and it's the team they're playing is called the so and so Nittany Tide. I thought that was. I'm like, anytime there's a Bama reference, I'm just so giddy about it.
Oh,
It's stupid.
And if said in Keith Jackson's voice,
It is.
That makes the whole 30-minute show.
It is. It really does.
Tide.
But Alabama's a 15-point favorite tonight, so they should win. If you haven't researched Alabama basketball at all, I'm telling you right now, hear me now, believe me later, Brandon Miller is going to be a problem for everybody. Oh, I can't wait to watch him play tonight. It's on ESPN Plus, but yeah, I'm going to be watching it. So anyway,
my challenge, Brandon. Hopefully, they'll let me give the pregame speech. Hopefully, and I would challenge Brandon. This is my challenge to Brandon because I don't know the kid, so far be it for me to challenge him. But this is what needs to be said to Brandon by someone he would actually listen to, like Nate. Don't play this season and be happy coming out of it with people saying you're the best NBA prospect in this league. Don't be happy with that. Make people say you're the best player in this league. You're the best player in this league, not the best, because J.D. Davison was an NBA prospect. Let's be brutally, he was an NBA prospect. Primo, if we're allowed to say his name right now, Josh Primo, an NBA prospect. Colin Sexton, he was maybe the best player in the league the year that he played at Alabama. He was the reason Alabama won games. Be Sexton. Be the player. I know you have other world next level potential that's going to make you super wealthy, and we'll be rooting for you at that level. But be the best player, not just flash next level potential.
All right, buddy, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, roll tide.
Roll Tide.
Hey, I got